Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial. Today I will be talking about some of the basic terms which you will need in order to follow this course through. So first off, you have three main categories of people. There are white hat hackers, gray hat hackers, and black hat hackers. Uh, Everything that we will be doing falls into this category here. So white hats. Those are people whose activities are within the confines of the law. There are people such as pen testers, ethical hackers, people like you and me, and so on. Then you have gray hat hackers whose activities are bordering between legal and illegal. It's a bit of a shady area there. In addition to that, you have the most known category, which is black hat hackers. And usually, and unfortunately, every time somebody hears the term hacking, it is associated with people from black hat world. Uh, there are people who conduct all sorts of illegal activities or conduct activities without any regard for the law and, I don't know, extract information from certain servers, credentials, your credit card information, take services down, usually to extract some sort of financial gain. In any case, down below, you have footprinting. Now, the act of footprinting is basically information gathering. Uh, you are you're conducting some sort of reconnaissance work. You are figuring out the IP of the server, figuring out which ports are open, and with that you can conclude which services are running there. But it doesn't necessarily need to be confined to the digital world. The act of footprinting can also be when you go to the company itself. You just walk in. It doesn't necessarily need to be a company. It can be pretty much any building with the servers in it. And you have a look around. You try to gather some information there on site, or you go and you dig to their trash cans. Go behind the building, jump into those trash containers, and get some information from there. Also, people have been known to go onto parking lots to see who the employees are, who works there, all sorts of things. So this is just general information gathering in regards to your chosen target. It doesn't need to be confined to the digital world. Anyway, down below you have certain types of attacks. You have DOS and DDos. Very basically the same thing implemented in a different way. DOS stands for denial of service, usually called childish attacks because they were relatively easy to implement, and they still are, provided of course you have enough machines, but that's the domain of DDoS. In general, what happens here is that you perform a certain amount of requests, more requests than a server can handle, and then server begins dropping connections. For example, Apache web server, I believe by default it can handle up to 10,000 connections or so. And if you can make more than 10,000 requests, basically everybody else making any sort of requests will not be able to access the website because their connections will be dropped simply because Apache will say, okay, I have too many users, I have more users than I can handle, all the other connections will be dropped by default, thereby making the site inaccessible even though you haven't really broken any codes, you haven't really broken through any firewalls or stole any passwords or anything of a kind. But when you're DOSing something, it's just you. So all the requests, everything is coming just from your own computer. And that is not always the most efficient of ways. In fact, it generally can only work if there is a flaw in the way in which requests are processed. However, that is why you have DDoS attacks. When you have multiple computers, multiple connections, and they are all making simultaneous requests to a certain server, and this is really difficult to fight off. I mean, you really need to have a clever configuration of your firewall, and you need to have quite a good firewall as well. Usually you would need a physical one to prevent these sort of DDoS attacks, and by physical I mean a router firewall or something of a kind. This is quite difficult to, it's not difficult to actually do the attack itself, as it is difficult to make the necessary preparations. First of all, you need to go about infecting other devices which you will enslave and use in order to perform this sort of an attack. This is the hard part. The DDoS part is quite easy compared to that. For that, in order for you to infect other computers, you need two things. You need RATs, remote administration tools, and you need to make them FUD. You need to make them fully undetectable. That is what the term FUD stands for. So it just means that they cannot be detected by antiviruses, or more precise term would be that they are not labeled as something malicious by antivirus programs. And by the way, sometimes, actually most of the times, you don't actually need to make your own applications fully undetectable. There are plenty of pen testing companies out there, and not just pen testing companies, but other companies as well, who will pay very good sums of money if you can make their programs fully undetectable by